This is a shelf I'm making, and I wanted to put a fancy edge on it before I put the finish on. So all it is a piece of plywood. I've got it cut to size, but like I said, I want to put a fancy edge on it. To make a rock face edge on this project, I use a Bondo type of epoxy. Just put it right on the work surface here, put your hardener in it, and I can mix it up right here on top of the work surface. We're going to paint this after we're finished, so it's going to work out just fine for a workpiece. After it's pressed into the edge really well, take a gloved hand, and we're going to try to not pull it off, but pull your finger away and let the material come out with you. And we're going to make a lot of high points on this. We don't have to worry about sharp edges right now because we're going to sand that off as soon as this sets up. Watch your time on this. It sets up fairly quickly, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, somewhere in that ballpark. And before it gets rock hard, we want to take a piece of sandpaper and sand off those rough edges. After we have all of the high points sanded off, it's time to give it a coat of paint. So I want to sand everything down, make everything smooth, and then I'm going to paint the entire thing. Really important to try to get the paint worked into the edges really well. Sometimes there's a lot of crevices and dips that it's kind of hard to hit without paying attention to it. After the first side and the edges are painted, I like to flip it over, use the painter's triangle, and just go ahead and coat both sides with paint, both at the same time. After the paint is set up the next day, it's time to sand everything smooth as best we can. It's going to be time to start giving this the decorative coat. The first step in this process, I took some brown mica flakes, mixed it up with alcohol in a spray bottle, and I took a second bottle with coffee colored micro flakes and mixed that up. Then I just took those two bottles and misted the surface. Be sure you hit the edges on this so it kind of all blends in together. Let the alcohol evaporate for a day, so all we have left is the flakes, and then it's time to start with the next coat. The next day is going to be several steps on this. First, we mix up some clear epoxy and mix that out all across the surface. Be sure we get it mixed up really well, and after the top is chopped out, we want to be sure that the edges are coated. After we have everything coated well with epoxy, it's time to pop the bubbles in the epoxy that got in there during the mixing process. The first step, I'll just take a heat gun and go over it several times, get the bubbles popped out with that. As soon as we have the bubbles popped, I mist it with a black spray paint, and as soon as it's misted, take the same two bottles of the alcohol that we had and mist the surface again. The alcohol will create cells throughout the project, and you'll be able to see the initial coating that you put down. Gives it a really nice 3D effect. Let that dry for a day, and then it's time to put on a clear coat of epoxy. This time I'll use the torch and torch out the bubbles that's in it. And of course, I have to let it set a day, let it cure out. So we have the final coat of clear on this, and it should be ready to pass on. Here it is after everything's all finished. It's dry. We can set stuff on it, not a problem. Kind of hard to see the details in it with the reflection of the light, but there's definite 3D designs going on here. You can see depth in it if you was actually able to look at it without the reflection. The rock edge came out pretty good. If you want to make something kind of fancied up a little bit, instead of just a plain shelf rough edges, we can make it look nice that way. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you haven't subscribed yet, we would really appreciate it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.